Alrighty, we are live. Let me just double check that we are live. And yes, we are. All right. Hey, Joey, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. So while we wait for a few people to join, I'm just gonna go ahead and read our followers. I don't have another screen, so I'm not gonna share my screen, but I'm gonna read them. Um, And also, I think on last stream, I got confused because I thought we were almost at 400, but now I see 361. So probably I was very confused, and we had like 358 probably, and I thought we were near 400, but I was very wrong. So um, I remember Johnny followed us on last stream. Thank you, Johnny. And then we have Krishna and Cloudcare. So thank you both for following us on Twitch. I really appreciate it. And again, anyone watching, you can just go to twitch.tv/MuleSoft underscore community. And there you will find all of our previous recordings and you will be able to talk to us in the chat. So that's the overall better option, but you can also watch us on LinkedIn and Twitter. So let me put LinkedIn and Twitter there so you can follow us there as well. Hi. Hey, Vinay. Hi, Paul. Yay, we're getting people on LinkedIn, so that's awesome.
Yep.
And that's it. So we're still 40 followers away. I thought it was 2, but I was very wrong. So sorry about that. Um, and that's it for my side. So, Joey, how are you doing?
Doing great. So, interesting enough, it's actually my third speaking session for today. So, it's a long day.
Wow, what time is it?
Right now, it's 11:32 p.m. here. So, close to midnight.
Wow. Okay, so it's your last one, hopefully?
This will be the last one. Yes. Yes, correct.
Okay, that's good. All right. Okay, we're getting people from Twitch. Hi, Cloud Jedi. Thank you.
Yep. That's actually me.
Yay.
So,
Oh, okay. Thank you, thank you. All right, we're getting more people. I guess you can get started. Just tell us a little bit about yourself so we all can be on the same page of who you are.
sure. First of all, thank you for having me, Alex. I really appreciate the time. So, just to introduce myself, I'm Joey Chan. I'm actually a Salesforce MVP. For those that aren't aware, it's more or less like equivalent of the MuleSoft ambassador, since I believe most of the audience that we have here are either MuleSoft developers or architects, right? So, I'm also a MuleSoft mentor, and I've actually been focusing on Salesforce for around 14 years now. So most of my experience is coming from a purely development background. So I used to do a lot of the point-to-point integrations using Apex because many for a certain segment of the Salesforce user base, they don't necessarily have the budgets to be able to acquire middleware. So with that, mostly it's really a lot of the Salesforce development focusing on Apex. It used to be a lot of Visual Force pages. Now it's a lot of Lightning Web Components, and now we're also focusing a lot on the Salesforce integrations that we have. So of course, MuleSoft definitely comes in. And with that, we also empower Salesforce customers to be able to do things themselves, including admins and consultants. So that's where MuleSoft Composer comes in.
All right, awesome. I'm not sure if you're the first Salesforce MVP that we have here. Maybe we have had a bit more, but it's always great to see the both communities coming together. So thank you for doing this stream.
Sure. Yes. I think for me, it's actually quite interesting how I then found the MuleSoft community. It's very vibrant in a way. Of course, it's not as big as a Salesforce, but at the same time, it's very important that people are really helping out each other, right? One of the things where I feel that we could really contribute on is how we can actually leverage both technologies and have them combined for much bigger impact, right? So there's so much to it.
Yeah, definitely. Agree. All right. Well, you can start sharing your screen if you want.
Sure. So just let me know if you can see my screen now.
Yep, I can see it.
All right. For today, I'll actually be talking to you about MuleSoft Composer. For some of you, you may have seen the previous Twitch stream also about MuleSoft Composer, right? So I'll try not to get into too much detail about how it works, but basically, MuleSoft Composer is really targeted towards the low code um, capabilities, right? So in a way, if you're talking about MuleSoft Composer for Salesforce, these are actually targeted towards whether it's an admin, an end user, or basically business user, right? So typically, if we think about the Anypoint platform, they're mostly focused on large, complex projects, right? But the question is, how do we enable the admins, the consultants, to be able to create integrations without necessarily have to be dealing with the IT, right? So that's actually where MuleSoft Composers comes in. And what I'll be talking to you about is some use cases to actually implement integrations along with Slack, along with SMS, and also using WhatsApp. All right. With that, I'll actually go straight into the demo since many of you may already be familiar with MuleSoft Composer. And then I'll go through some of the different considerations that you have to do when you're building Composer. And also, for architects out there, you have to consider when is it actually appropriate to use Composer, when is it appropriate to use the Anypoint platform, and the pros and cons with that, right? All right, with that, I'll go ahead and start. So first use case that we'll be dealing with is something simple. So how can we actually send an SMS, for example, for a birthday? So I'll go ahead and create a new flow. And while waiting for that, I'll just show you the back end. For Salesforce, we actually have a standard birth date field on the contact object. So objects in Salesforce are basically just database tables. So with that, I have this handy tool just to give us a list of contacts. And then I also created this is birthday. So let me export this first, and then let's take a look at the record. So here we have a sample contact, and then we have the details, right? The birth date is actually a standard field. So I've actually entered today's date plus 1980, all right? That way we'll know that it's this person's birthday. And then one other thing that I did is we want to determine is it actually today's the person's birthday, right? In order to do that, what I did is I created a new field on this specific object called is birthday. So from here, we just have to open up the fields and then birthday. And then all it's simply doing is simply looking at the month and the year, month and the day. And if it's matching up with today's date, and it's the person's birthday, right? So at this point, we now have this data, right? So this is just a sample. And then from here, we have different options in terms of how we want to trigger a MuleSoft Composer. One very important thing to take note, when you, let's say, when a company purchases MuleSoft Composer, what happens is that as soon as it's activated, what it does is in the background, it actually creates a new instance. And a lot of these are actually based on the Anypoint platform. So you could think about this MuleSoft Composer as like a subset of what you can do in the Anypoint platform. So they're leveraging that capability, and I believe they're actually using Cloud Hub 2.0 on this one. And then from here, just to make it a lot easier for us to test things out, we'll be using the scheduler. But one thing to take note, for example, if you're using the system event, we have a lot of these different apps, right? They're basically called connectors. These are built-in ways for us to be able to easily connect to these different systems. So of course, you have Salesforce here. One very important thing to take note, you're actually not limited to the Salesforce org that we're currently in. For example, this specific org, the Cloud Jedi demo org, we can actually connect to multiple different orgs, meaning you could be connecting to a sandbox, you could be connecting to a second production org, third production org. So it doesn't necessarily have to be within this specific org. But at least for our demo purposes, we're connecting with specific org that we have in order to get the data. All right. So with that, let's start with the scheduler just to make it easier for us to test. So from here, one thing to take note, you'll see that we have these different timings that we can fire off that scheduler. So we have 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes. One of the important things some people consider is what if I want to run this every day at 9 a.m.? Right now, it's not yet possible to tell the system to do that every day at 9 a.m. What you have to do is actually go in at 9 a.m. and then activate it at that point. So in a way, that's still a hack, but at least there's a workaround. So from here, the question is, what do we want to do with that? So every day we want this flow to run, right? So at this point, we want to get the data from Salesforce, right? So what we'd have to do is get a system action and then tell it, hey, I want to get this data from Salesforce, whether it's this current org or some other org, right? So we could go to Salesforce connector. And then at this point, I've actually already connected this. So it's actually just connecting through OAuth. So I'll simply select this. Now the question is, what do you want to do with that Salesforce org? Do you want to create a new record, update, get records, and then create an update? So these are all of the different actions that you can do. You could also even download and upload the file. I believe the limits for these is around 25 megabytes. So just something to consider. So in this case, we want to get all of the contacts that have a birthday for the day so that we can do something about that, right? In this case, we can select the contact. From here, as a best practice, we want to make sure that we're only selecting fields that we want to get, right? Because with Salesforce, the thing is, something interesting, normally when we're dealing with databases, we try to normalize the data, right? But in Salesforce, as much as you can, you actually want to denormalize your data. A large part of it is because of the reporting capabilities. So just something to keep in mind. In this case, let's try to get the ID, the name, first name, full name, last name, and then mobile phone, because we'll be sending SMS to this person, right? And then we also wanted to get the birthday. So is it the birthday and this one? All right, apply. And take note, at least for Salesforce, the thing is you could have objects with up to 500 fields, 800 fields. You don't necessarily want to get all of the fields that you aren't really going to use, right? So from here, we can create a filter. Now, I only want those that have a birthday of the day. So we use that field. Birthday is true. It's the person's birthday. So this is the back end. So you'll see the value is true. And then I also want to get only those that have a mobile phone. And then from here, it's not empty. And then we don't necessarily need to be sorting it. So you should be fine with this. And then at this point, right now we can see that there's actually only one record here. What if there's 3 or 100 records here, right? So the way it works is that it works off of a collection or a list. So in order to process the data from here, you actually need to have another step, which is use the for each. This specific query will actually give you a list of records, list of contacts. From there, we have to decide what do we then do with this. Take note, you have to be very careful about these two icons when you use what. If you click on this, this will process it within this for each. If not, this will be another step, not related to this one. All right, so we'll make sure it's inside. And then now the question is, what do we want to do with those contacts? In this case, I'll just send a quick message using Twilio. Take note, you'll see a lot of these actions, right? So a lot of these are actually their own connectors. And then something to consider, what if I don't actually have connector? What if there's some third-party system that I want to connect to, but it's not actually available here? There's also that option of HTTP connector that we can use. So we'll be using that because right now you'll see that there's no WhatsApp connector available, right? We'll be going through that. And then we'll start with Twilio. And then I've actually already connected it, but just for your context, you could simply sign up to Twilio. And then their pricing is really cheap though. You could actually get something for testing. You could get your own phone number for just $1 every month. And then if you're sending it, let's say you can either send an SMS or a call to US numbers. It will only cost you like 1 cent each. So something to play around with. There's so much you can do with this one. So from here, we'll just connect to Twilio. Now the question is, do we want to make a phone call or send a message? So in this case, we'll just send a quick text message. Very important. We need to determine who do we send it to, right? Remember, we actually grabbed the phone mobile number. So we'll select that. And then for the from field, we actually need to get it from this account. So in this case, I actually have it here. Copy. And then from this number. All right. So this is the custom expression. So we can either just put the values here, happy birthday, and then, or we could also use custom expression. Interesting thing about this is actually using data weave in the background. So you'll see many of these functions that you'll be familiar with if you work with data weave. So in this case, I'll just do a merge data. Let's say we could use the first name. Or we could also, for example, use operators. Let's say string functions. So we could make it all caps, for example, just in case you want to do that. Upper, and then we'll make sure to put this inside. And then hope you have a great day. So we'll hit apply. And then now we can already start testing this out. So let's just make sure to save it. So Twitch demo. I'll just save it. One thing to take note, because it's actually built on top of the endpoint platform. Something interesting, you'll see here, it's actually an iframe. If you look at the source, it's this eu1.composer.mulesoft.com. So each time you do something, it's actually being saved outside Salesforce. So from here, this is the test. So all we have to do is click on test. It's actually a lot faster to trigger something to test it using scheduler if you're testing things out, assuming you don't need a record to trigger it, right? So as soon as you test something on the scheduler, it will actually run automatically. Just waiting for it to start. It's now processing. Let's see if it's successful. All right, we'll see some logs here. So we'll notice it's a checkbox. So it means it ran this part, and it also grabbed one record, and with this specific birthday, with the name, and then it's going through this process, right? It grabbed this specific record. There's only one record, so it only go through it once. And you can actually review the iteration. Let's say if there's 100 here, you should be able to see all of the actions here. And then from here, we're actually sending this one, right? So now in order for us to check actually if we got that message, we'll have to go in. And now we'll see here, You'll see happy birthday with the capital Joey. And then this is the message, right? So just going back, actually there's so much more you can do here. You could also even call a number. So imagine this. Let's say if there's an emergency, and it's something super urgent, for example, something's on fire or what, right? What if you could create a process that would automatically send a Slack message, a SMS, and also call maybe 5 people because it's very important, right? Maybe there's a fire or there's something super important. We want to make sure that um, the key people are actually notified and this to make sure that there's nothing wrong that will happen, right? So it's one of the possible use cases. And imagine this, something that we've built within less than 20 minutes, right? So going through this, we'll be keep on iterating this. What if you also want to send a Slack message? How do we do that, right? So at this point, you can actually just add another action here. So from here, I'd want to connect with Slack. So this Slack, I've actually already connected it to my account. So if you select this one, the question is, what do we want to do? Do we want to get the user by email? Do we want to send a direct message? Or do we want to post it to a specific channel? In this case, I'll just send a direct message to myself. From here, pick from a list. So I'll just select myself and then messages. What if I'd like to make sure that we send a really nice gift to this specific customer because it's a really valued customer, right? So from here, we could use a custom expression. Hi, Joey. Make sure to send a really gift for the name. So let's just use the full name here. And then apply. In this case, we don't need the bot name and the icon URL. We'll just go ahead and save this. And then test it again. So what it will do is go through the same process, send another text message, but also send a Slack message. So from here, we can then check. So you'll see this Composer app, and then it's actually sending this specific message from it, right? Take note, there are so many other potential use cases for this. You can send a message depending on where you are. For example, there's a large deal, for example, $500,000 worth of opportunity within Salesforce. You want to make sure, for example, hey, does the VP know about this? Does the CEO know about this? So for the other smaller deals, they may not necessarily need to care about that, but for larger deals, they'd want to make sure that they can do whatever they can in order to make sure it happens, right? So any questions so far, I guess?
Not yet.
Not yet. All right. So next part is question is how do we then use the WhatsApp API? Something interesting about the WhatsApp API, it's not as flexible as, for example, Twilio. So in order to actually do that, since many of you should would already know, Facebook actually owns WhatsApp, right? And then the way you deal with that is you actually have to go through the developers.facebook.com. The way it works is you have to create an app. So if you already have an existing Facebook account, you could simply use that. And then basically you have to create an app. So from here, in this case, I actually am on the specific app that I've created, which is MuleSoft Composer demo. I could, for example, create a new app, and then it's going to be business. We won't be going through all of the details here, but just give you an idea on what needs to happen. So going back, let's just use the app that we've already created. You just need to go through the different steps. One important thing that we have here is we actually need to understand what we need to send, right? So I actually have a WhatsApp account, and this is actually a good documentation, right? So you see here, this is a sample curl request. It gives you the endpoint, how headers, this the content type, and what is the body of the message. The way WhatsApp works is that it's not, uh, you actually need to have pre-approved templates in order for you to send to a specific customer. The way it works is that I guess part of it's avoiding the spam. The way you do it is that you first send a specific template. So, okay, for example, for a promotion, and then what happens is that they can respond to that message for you to have a conversation with them, and then they have a some pricing structure depending on how that works, and then at least for now we'll just be focusing on sending a mass message specifically to your customers. All right, so you'll see here we have all of these details already. We can either use this or run in Postman, but what we'll do is we'll actually be using the HTTP connector. So with this, I'll go ahead and click edit. I'll go ahead and click this one. So question is, what do we do, right? Because we don't have a Facebook connector or WhatsApp, we have to be using the HTTP connector. At this point, I'll go ahead and just create a new HTTP connection. Tray. And then the way you connect to it is actually using the bearer token. So I'll go ahead and just make sure I can copy that. So what I have is actually the endpoint first. So I'll just copy this one. Remember, that's from this specific URL. And then we could also just copy this one for the token. Next. At this point, it's very important to take note. You will not be able to access that. All you can do is either delete that connection or or see it as just the name. So it's very important for you to have your naming convention properly. You have to identify which, let's say, Salesforce org it's connected to. Is it a sandbox or a production, and things like that. So from here, we just need to do a test connection. We just need to post the data. So in this case, we have that request path, right? So here, let's copy that. So question is, what's the request header? So we already have the token, but we also need to add this content type. We'll tell it that, hey, we're passing in a JSON format, right? And then the question is, what's the request body? So actually we can copy this and then paste it in. And then let's try connecting. What it will do is it actually will try to send that message. Let's see what happened. Let's see the details. What exception? All right, let's go back for a bit. This URL. Let's verify this token just to make sure.
I think you're missing the 2 in the body.
2 in the body. Let's see. Sorry, which one?
Because there you have messaging product, WhatsApp, and then 2, and it doesn't say anything at the beginning.
Yep, I see. Yep, actually have under sample. All right, that makes sense. So I have this prepared. Take note, I copied it from the clipboard. So we need to have the 2 field. it needs something to be able to send it to, right? So let's try it. There you go. It actually sent something already. I did actually receive something. So from here, you'll see that, hello world, welcome and congratulations. This is the approved template that they provide. So from here, actually already sent that, right? In order to make this something that's part of the flow, we have to just make sure that we add the HTTP method, which is the endpoint. It's a post, and then here's the path, and then query parameters. Let's see, it's just the headers, right? So let's just make sure that we add that in, the content type, and application JSON. And then this is something very important. We actually need to add a sample request. Similar to what we added earlier, I'll go ahead and start doing this. So I'll paste it in and save it. So what you'll notice is that, let's see, sample request, right? And then from here, once we've actually added that sample request, if you select optional fields, you can then add all of these things that we can send. As soon as you click on apply, it will then show all of the fields here. So if we're going to check, remember that specific JSON, what we have to just fill it in. So we have the messaging product is WhatsApp. What else? The two is blank, right? It's a template. And then for the two, I'll make sure to put my phone number here. And then the name would be Hello World here as template name. And then the code, language code would be English US. So from here, let's go ahead and save this. And then we can then go through a test again. Let's see if this sends. All right, test it finished. So let's see, did it actually do that? Let's see. Content, query parameters. This is the header, content type is application JSON. Something interesting happened. I'm not sure if you knew, but notice here, it's past midnight now. It didn't get this contact because I need to change this birthday now to 11. So something interesting with dates. Let's try it again. It's already November 11 here. All right, with that, I did actually already receive the message now. So it's already 12:04 here, and you'll see that it actually finished. So I had to change that birthday because it's already at 12:04 a.m. And then from here, it also sent another SMS to me, and then also sent that Slack message. So you'll see it here again, and then another SMS. And then also for WhatsApp, we now have this message. So there's actually so many things that you can do with this, right? This is something that we've built within 35 minutes, right? So the question is, what are the different considerations, right? So the main audience for MuleSoft Composer is really targeted towards business users and ideally non-technical, right? Because one thing that we have to distinguish as, let's say, MuleSoft architects, because this is definitely going to be part of what enterprises would be using. For some of you, you may already be familiar with a new product called MuleSoft RPA. So basically, any point platform is really good at interacting with, let's say, systems that have an API. What if you're dealing with legacy systems? Those, let's say, black and green screens. Like, for example, in the Philippines, you typically see them in blanks. So, what if you're dealing with that? Typically, they don't actually have any APIs. At that point, usually that's when most company would stop in terms of automation, right? What RPA provides is actually a way to be able to simulate human actions. So imagine opening up a specific window, going through a login process. I'll just show you a quick idea in terms of how MuleSoft is actually pushing forward with a new package. So there's what we call a MuleSoft automation package, wherein they're actually combining the capabilities of both MuleSoft RPA, Composer, plus zero point 0.5 V cores of the independent platform. So this is now at $57,000 per year, starting at. And then the way it works is that you're actually given 6 Composer connectors. So that includes Salesforce, Tableau, and Slack, and 3 additional connectors, which is no, Composer connectors. There's actually quite a lot of Composer connectors now. I believe last time I checked, there's around 26. So you have Asana, Box, email. So how do you use this? For example, one of the common use cases that you'll see in terms of RPA is, for example, imagine a company that deals with different suppliers. The problem there is typically those suppliers don't necessarily have an API, right? Or can connect to your system. What they do is they would send an invoice through email. Now, what do you have to do in order to get that, right? Normally, in the past, what companies used to do is go into Gmail, log in, find that email, find the attachment, download it, and then manually go through each line item and then put that into their own system, whether it's Salesforce, NetSuite, or SAP, right? So depending on what they use. So what RPA can do is, for example, in relation to MuleSoft Composer is, MuleSoft Composer can actually listen for new emails with a certain subject line or with, let's say, um, an attachment. From there, you can then leverage third-party services like Amazon in order to read that PDF, turn that into JSON format, and then leverage that in order to push that data to another system. So a lot of these, if you think about it, MuleSoft automation is not necessarily cheap, but at the same time, a lot of it, the main reason why you'd want to consider using MuleSoft automation is really that end-to-end process and all of the governance that you can actually get out of using MuleSoft as a platform. Because Salesforce also owns MuleSoft, there's that innate trust. And of course, they're actually serving some of the largest companies in the world too, right? So in a way, even financial institutions use this. So there's so much trust. A lot of the regulations, there's so much that they're already using, and a lot of these are all built in, right? There are also other options in terms of integration, low code integration, but at the same time, they may not necessarily have all the security mechanisms, all of the, and more importantly, the governance aspect, right? Imagine if you have, let's say, hundreds of users and they're all doing their own thing, right? How do you make sure that you're concentrated in terms of your efforts and not wasting things in terms of effort, right? Um, I've been blabbing so much, but I guess any questions so far?
Nope, there are no
All right.
questions so far.
Yep. So something interesting that's fairly new, actually. I believe it was only launched less than 2 weeks ago. Is now there's already a concept of templates. So why would you actually even consider using templates? So these are actually something that Salesforce or MuleSoft already provides. This basically accelerates how a typical business user or admin can actually connect with different systems. You'll see here we can have connection to Jira, NetSuite, what else? Um, Right now, they're actually still working on it, but for the most part, what we have here is Jira and NetSuite, right? The reason for that is this is one of the most common use cases for MuleSoft Composer. So whenever you're creating, let's say, an opportunity record, because for many companies, Salesforce is actually used by sales, right? So typically, if you're talking about starting from the prospecting aspect, just understanding is it a good fit, and then all the way to actually closing that project, right, or that sale. At that point, you use the opportunity record and change the stage to close one. At that point, you can then, for example, have the option of creating another record in a third-party system, which is NetSuite. So this one is literally fairly new. That's why you don't see a lot of the templates yet. But the important thing here, it actually does a lot of the heavy lifting for you. So imagine it literally like a template where you just need to fill in your details, right? So you just need to connect to, for example, to Salesforce. You select Salesforce in the NetSuite connector. I actually don't have access to NetSuite, so I won't be able to demo it. And then one other thing that's fairly new is actually the usage summary. So you want to make sure that you're actually tracking your usage because remember, there's this 57,000 automation credits, right? But take note, it doesn't mean that you only have 57,000 runs. The conversion here is that one credit is actually equal to 50 MuleSoft Composer tasks. So imagine this number but multiplied by 50, you have access to 2.85 million tasks. The way tasks are calculated is by going to, for example, Composer Flow. Let's go back to the one that we created. Not this one. The way it works that each of the actions is actually considered one task. I believe the schedule is not counted. So each action. So this is considered 1, 2, 3. And then however many times it runs. So something to keep in mind. And also, one thing to keep in mind is each time, for example, it grabs this data from Salesforce, because in Salesforce, we actually have a concept of API limits. Each org has their own API limits in terms of the number of API calls you're allowed to within a 24-hour period. So the way you see that is by going to Setup, Salesforce, and then Company Information. You'll see here we have the number of API requests within the last 24 hours. We're actually allowed a total of 102,000. And the way it works is actually on a rolling 24-hour period. So it's not based on the current day. So it doesn't reset at midnight. It actually looks at what you have for the past 24 hours. So something very important, each time you do a query like this one, it's actually considered one API call. Because remember, it's actually running on top of the MuleSoft endpoint platform, right? So it's then connecting to this specific Salesforce instance. All right. And then from here, the way Salesforce calculates that usage summary is actually done monthly. So it's one of those things that you have to keep in mind. Be very careful about creating your own composer flows, because what you don't want is making that criteria too too wide. What if, let's say, this is something I'm expecting to happen sooner or later too, right? So what if, let's say, somebody loads up, let's say, 100,000 lead records in Salesforce, and you have a composer flow that fires off of, let's say, the creation of a new lead. That could literally eat up quite a lot of your credits, right? So something that you have to be very careful about. And another important thing to note, there's no concept of versioning yet right now. In order to do that, what you have to do is really just clone the record, or at least this specific composer flow, right? Um, that's why, for example, the naming convention is actually something super important, because at that point you need to understand, or at least have a quick glimpse. Hey, this is still in development. Is this still in version 1, version 2? You could use semantic versioning even actually here, right? But of course, just make sure that everybody understands what it is. So version 1.1.0, right? So all of these things, something to consider as you build your composer flows. All right. I guess any other questions for now?
I guess how can you get started with Composer if you're new?
All right. So in terms of getting started, one of the places where you could actually start with that is through Trailhead. But this is something very important. The problem right now is that only Salesforce partners and MuleSoft partners can actually get access to a Composer instance. That's the bad news. But the good news is that there's actually, I believe, a automation workshop that's being offered by MuleSoft that actually gives you hands-on access. So what they'll do is they'll actually give you, I believe, up to 2 days access. So these are some of the times that we have. Check it out. I'm not sure if there are still remaining slots, but I can send over this link. And then basically, it's a 2 hour workshop that's free, and you actually would have somebody from MuleSoft going through the use cases and how you actually build an automation using MuleSoft Composer. And each participant would have their own instance that it can play around with for, I believe, up to 2 days. For those that aren't working for partners, this is right now the only option. All right. And then going back to use cases, right? Depending on the audience of who's building things, we have to consider when do we use the endpoint platform versus MuleSoft Composer, right? So a lot of it is the technicalities, right? Who is going to create it, right? Is it the consultants, the less technical folks, or is it the MuleSoft developers or architects, right? The thing about MuleSoft is, of course, the complexity that you have to deal with, right? Because at least for MuleSoft Composer, some companies just want to get things done. Their needs are simple. They don't have time to deal with a lot of the intricacies of actually understanding how to build things on the endpoint platform, right? This allows them a way to be able to create integrations on their own without necessarily having to invest hundreds of hours to get that capability, right? So, one big factor too is, of course, the number of systems that you're dealing with, right? If you're dealing with 50, 100 systems, of course, MuleSoft Composer won't be the best tool for the job. It can orchestrate this, but there's only so far you can do, right? In terms of creating all of these if else statements, and up to a certain point, um, one big thing too is you actually cannot reuse an existing composer flow yet, meaning it's not yet possible to have a webhook as the entry point. The alternative to do that is you can actually use a Salesforce object. So you could create, let's say, a new object, pass the data into it, just create that data, and then from there, you can then reuse some of these composer flow. But as of right now, I believe that capability of having a webhook and firing it off of that is still in progress. Anything else? Any other questions? There's actually a trailhead module on MuleSoft Composer. So for some of you, just to give a glimpse, because Salesforce and MuleSoft trainings is somewhat separate still at this point, right? Although more and more, a lot of the trainings available within MuleSoft are already being ported over to the Trailhead. So this is something that would happen for both, I believe, both the paid instructor-led courses and where the resources would go. So in this case, simply search for MuleSoft Composer, and I believe there's actually a trail mix for it. So how you can get started, the basics, and there's this MuleSoft Composer trail mix that you can actually go through once you have access to it. Take note, you can still go through it even without access. It's just that it's a lot different when you're actually doing it and creating it. But here you'll see and understand how the API consumption is with Composer, right? So how do you integrate with Square? How do you connect different Salesforce orgs? How do you connect with Google Sheets and Tableau? So there's actually quite a number of them here. So there's so much to learn. So of course, you'll also be getting badges based on that. Any others so far?
Nope. But maybe I can ask you a little bit about so when you are from Salesforce first and then you learned MuleSoft, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So how did you start learning MuleSoft? What was your journey?
All right. Um, I first heard about MuleSoft maybe 4 or 5 years ago because we had an integration requirements. I believe during that time, Salesforce hasn't acquired, well, definitely they haven't acquired MuleSoft yet. At that point, I'm not sure. We did try to explore that, but the client that we have didn't actually push through with it. Uh, for this year, we actually have an existing Salesforce client that also acquired MuleSoft. That's when we really got really deep into the MuleSoft ecosystem, right? So coming from uh, mostly just Salesforce development background integration, a lot of it is point to point. Going through the process of really learning what it is to be a MuleSoft developer, to be a MuleSoft architect on both the integration and platform architect, and also learning a lot about the operation side, right? Going through, for example, the understanding how do you build the RAML, right? Going through the data wave courses and going through even the Cloud Hub, right? Because our client is actually using Cloud Hub. I haven't actually gone through the runtime fabric and the other options of, let's say, the bare metals, and but soon enough, that's probably something that we'll go through too, right? And at the same time, something interesting is if you go through the community one, that's actually training.mulesoft.com. There's actually one wherein if you want to build your APIs and expose it to the public and you want a custom user interface for it, so there's actually a course for that. So which one is it? Community. So if you're talking about API community manager, This actually requires a Salesforce instance, and it actually requires Experience Cloud, which is basically some of the things that I've been doing for the past many years, building portals for customers. So this is quite interesting. If you go through this course, a lot of these are actually focused on the Salesforce side of things. So it's really a lot of learning. I'd say just this year alone, already went through probably at least 400 hours or so, just going through all of the different things about MuleSoft and just making sure that we're fully ready and know all of the different consideration and best practices for it.
Wow, that's a lot of hours.
Yep.
So, how are you liking it so far?
Yeah, I'll be honest though, I actually do enjoy a lot of these things. Um, integration in the past, mainly because we're limited by the client budgets. A lot of our previous customers are mostly in the SME segment, so small to medium. The thing is, of course, they're quite limited. They don't necessarily have a budget for a proper middleware. So we're really forced to do a lot of these point-to-point integrations, right? But with this one, as we deal with larger customers, we can definitely see how it can be complicated for many customers, right? And I feel like this is where we can actually provide so much value, having the Salesforce expertise, and from there, really understanding what needs to be in Salesforce, what needs to be outside Salesforce. And at that point, it's really that full architecture, understanding how each system connects to each other and in what way. And it's really going through all of that process that we just have to go through, right?
Yeah. And finally, where can we find you? You say that
Sure.
you're the Cloud Jedi, so
Yep.
where are your
So
channels?
one is, of course, you could look at our website at cloudjedi.com, but for the most part, the best place is actually following me or connect with me on LinkedIn. I also post every now and then on Twitter, but not as much, and mostly on the LinkedIn platform. So if you want, feel free to follow me here. Just search for Joey Q Chan or Joey Chan Salesforce. Probably one of those that would pop up. So this is me, and yeah, it's mostly that. So feel free to add a click on the notification bell if you want to hear more about Composer and integrations, Salesforce integrations.
Amazing. All right, I put your stuff in the chat so people can follow you.
Sure.
Perfect. All right. Well, let me know in the last 2 minutes if there are questions. If not, then this was super, super insightful, Joey. I really, really appreciate it because I haven't been able to use Composer. So it is great to see it in action and it looks very simple to use. It's just clicks. And even like the did with segment that you did, it's so easy. You just have to select the fields and you can just use the functions that they're putting there for you. So I think it's amazing. I'm very excited for this product.
Right. Definitely kudos to the team that actually built this. Of course, I've actually been interacting with some of the user experience architects that actually built this. So, in a way, great job for them. I mean, integration is a complex topic. There's so many things to learn, and them try to make simplify it for the end users, something that end users wouldn't stay away from, is definitely applaudable, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, I didn't see any questions then. So thank you so much, Joey. Let me just finally show this again. Again, remember, all of you watching in LinkedIn or Twitter, you can just go to twitch.tv/MuleSoft_community. Follow us. Has anyone followed us lately? No, I don't think so. Just CloudCare 2 hours ago. Thank you,
Mm-hmm.
CloudCare. But yeah, go ahead and follow us. You can see there all of our previous live streams, including like not only the technical ones, also we cover Dreamforce, Connect, TDX. So feel free to follow us there. And if you download the app in your phone, you will be able to get notifications in your phone as soon as we are live, so you don't miss any single stream that we do. And right now we are streaming Tuesdays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time and Thursdays at 10:30 a.m. Eastern Time, which is this time. And that would be it. Thank you so much, Joey.
Sure. Thank you for having me. Just send
Yeah, no
over the
problem.
link to the chat so that just in case anybody wants to connect.
Perfect.
All right.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank
All
you.
right. Bye bye.
Bye bye.